Hey everyone. Okay, think about this. Forget about programmable money. What if your money was watching you? Today, I want to explore an idea with you. And before I start, I need to be very clear about something. I do not believe that this is happening today. I have seen zero evidence that cash is secretly tracking people. This is not a prediction and it is not a claim. This is not something that I think is currently taking place. Today's video is just simply a thought experiment. But sometimes thought experiments, they can be useful because they do force us to think about where technology might be headed and what that could mean for preparedness, privacy, and independence. And so this idea came from a conversation my husband and I were having the other day while we were walking our little dog Lucy, who's a Jack Russell and has quite the personality. But like a lot of people in preparedness circles, we have talked about digital identities. We've talked about the CBDCs. We've talked about programmable money. And one of the most, let's put this down a bit. One of the most common arguments you hear is this: if things ever become too restrictive, people can always use cash. And because cash, it is viewed as the escape hatch, right? Like the backup plan, the alternative. And it's the thing that still allows you to operate outside of the system. And that's when we started joking around and we were like, well, what if we're focused on the wrong thing? What if the real question isn't programmable money? What if the real question is whether alternatives to currencies and our ability to buy and sell continue to exist at all? Because we all assume that cash is still the answer. But like the question is, what if one day it's not? What if the last escape hatch isn't really an escape hatch? I have to emphasize this, guys. I am not saying that this is happening. I just want to emphasize that this is just a thought experiment, and you might think that I'm right off my rocker. And if you want, you can find a deeper dive. We put a posting up about this topic on our platform, preppingcommunities.com. But let's just imagine a future where physical money still exists, right? You can still hold it. You can still put it in your wallet. You can still hand it to someone. And from the outside, it looks exactly like cash. But what if it wasn't anonymous anymore? What if each bill had some form of a unique identifier, not just the existing number on the current bills, but a different hidden global unique identifier, and not like a GPS tracker, or not necessarily something like a broadcasting signal or broadcasting a signal, but just a way to uniquely identify that specific piece of currency from a remote location. Okay, I know when I talk about this, I'm like, I kind of had reservations about doing this video on this topic because I thought people are going to think I'm mad, I'm crazy. But before we say, or you say, that this is impossible, remember, like, technology has a habit of changing what we think is possible. Like 20 years ago, most people weren't carrying smartphones around in their pockets. Today, most of us are voluntarily carrying these devices that know where we are, where we've been, what we buy, what we search for, and who we communicate with. So we can't argue that technology doesn't move fast, because it moves quick. It moves rapidly fast. So imagine a future. Okay, cash still exists, but every bill is uniquely identified and tracked, just like your digital money, but through some other advanced secret technology. Like every deposit, every withdrawal, every ATM, every cash register, every personal exchange, because every interaction just adds another piece to the puzzle. And that's where this thought experiment got really interesting, because maybe the money doesn't need to watch you. Maybe everything around the money is already watching it. Like, think about it. There are electronic devices everywhere. And that has already been proven already in devices coming from China. They slipped surveillance technology into our consumer electronic devices without us even knowing it. Like, think about it. The stores have cameras. Parking lots have cameras. The roads have cameras. Many businesses have cameras and track your purchases. Many people carry smartphones. Loyalty programs collect information. apps collect information, and AI systems are becoming increasingly capable of connecting information from multiple sources. So at some point, the question isn't whether cash is being tracked. The question becomes whether anonymity of all transactions might still exist. And then that becomes a very different conversation. So let's just take this one step further. Imagine a future where governments or corporations don't need to eliminate cash. Imagine they just simply need to make cash less useful, less private, less convenient, less effective as an alternative. Because if every alternative eventually becomes visible, monitored, scored, or regulated, then the question isn't really about money anymore. It's about dependence. And this is where preparedness comes back into the picture. Because preparedness, it's not just about food, it's not just about water, and it's not just about generators, and it's not just about supplies. Preparedness is also about understanding these systems that we depend on, because every system has vulnerabilities. Every system has a point of failure, and every system creates dependencies. The more dependent we become on systems that we do not control, the more vulnerable we become when those systems change. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Like maybe the concern isn't programmable money. Maybe it isn't digital identities. Maybe it isn't cash. Maybe those are just symptoms of something bigger. And maybe the bigger issue is dependency, privacy, control, and compliance. Because once people become dependent on systems that they don't control, the system doesn't need to force compliance. The dependency does the work for them. So let's just take this one step further, okay? Because if access to banking depends on a system, if access to communication depends on a system, if access to transportation depends on a system, and if access to information depends on a system, then the real question isn't who controls the money. The real question is who controls the systems and who controls the access. Your access to information, access to services, access to communication, to transportation, to banking, to commerce. Because once access depends entirely on systems controlled by others, the technology itself almost becomes irrelevant. The control comes from the dependence. Now, maybe none of this ever happens. Maybe cash remains cash and maybe privacy remains privacy. I certainly do hope that that's the case. But preparedness has always been about thinking through possibilities before they become realities. Not because we're afraid and not because we're predicting the future, but because understanding systems that we rely on, it helps us understand where the vulnerabilities might exist. And sometimes the most interesting questions aren't the ones that have the answers. They're the ones that make us stop and think. Anyway, that's really all I wanted to talk about today. I hope you don't think I'm absolutely crazy. This wasn't meant to be a prediction or a warning, just simply a thought experiment. And before we wrap up, I just want to encourage you, if you haven't already, please check out our platform, preppingcommunities.com. It's a free preparedness platform where people share ideas, experiences, and knowledge, just like this one, and different perspectives on preparedness, homesteading, self-reliance, and a whole lot more. And if you're looking for preparedness information, we have a pretty extensive library that has over 10,000 plus postings and more. And they cover topics, everything from food storage and water preparedness to communications and homesteading, gardening, emergency planning, and more. And if you'd like access to that information when the internet is not available, please, I encourage you to check out Prepper Offline. We just launched it. It's a searchable offline preparedness library containing our online content that you can store on your computer, your USB drive, external hard drive, vehicle, cabin, or off-grid location. So multiple locations. It basically works just like a website, only offline. I'll leave the links below if you're interested. So before this video ends, I'm curious, what do you think? Do you think I am nuts? Am I completely off base here? Or is this something worth considering in the idea that the real issue, it's not digital money at all, but the gradual disappearance of alternatives? And what alternatives do you think are most important to preserve as our world becomes more digital? I'm genuinely interested to hear your thoughts. And as always, I appreciate you, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch my videos. And until the next video, stay prepared, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.